Okay, perfect. I believe we're live. My name is Katie Hurst. I am the Director of Programming with Africa Oil and Power. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today on the state of oil markets led by His Excellency Gabriel Mbaga Obiang Lima, the Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons of Equatorial Guinea, in partnership with the African Energy Chamber and moderated by AOP and EBICON. Before we get started, I'm just going to take care of a few housekeeping items. We are accepting questions and answers today for the attendees through the question and answer box. You should see that on the bottom of your screen. It'll say Q&A. If you click on that, you can type in your question, and the moderators, myself and Concepcion, will handle those questions. There is also a chat box. Again, you'll see on the bottom of your screen an icon that says chat. And that chat box will enable you to communicate suggestions or recommendations or ideas with other members of the webinar, other attendees. Feel free to engage in that chat box. Please keep things civil. We will have some AOP members in that chat box as well, just kind of moderating that discussion. Today's program, His Excellency will provide some opening remarks to get the conversation going. We'll have a moderated question and answer period, and then the last few minutes of the webinar we're going to reserve for members of the media to ask a few questions of His Excellency as well. If you are a member of the media interested in asking a question or two at the end of the webinar, can you please, you should see on your attendee side, you should be able to virtually raise your hand. If you can do that so that a member of our team can be in contact with you about getting your question set up for the end, that would be great. We're also recording today's webinar, so it will be available after the call on YouTube. And we are really looking forward to hearing the discussion today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Concepcion Isuva, founder of EBICON, to introduce His Excellency the Minister.
Oh, thank you, Kati. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And without further ado, I'm going to ask His Excellency, the Minister of Mines and Energy and Hydrocarbons to do his opening remarks for us, please. Thank you very much, His Excellency.
Okay, thank you very much, Concha, and at the same time, Kati. I would first of all would like to start giving my appreciation for Africa Energy Chamber, for Africa Oil and Power, and EGO for Business, and all the other nationals and international companies who have actually contributed to be able to organize this web seminar. I want to also thank all the participants. I think clearly this is a new way, a new tool of working. We would have all love to continue going to a conference in which both we drink, we dance, we talk, but unfortunately because of this current situation, we need to continue doing our jobs and is to provide information of our industry. I will try to be as short as possible for my introduction. I wanted to discuss a little bit on the entire industry worldwide, then a little bit our dear continent, Africa continent, and then I'll conclude with our own in the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. Of course, we are all aware, and I don't know if nobody have heard it because maybe it has been in the moon or March that we all have been affected by this little COVID-19. We say little, but they have a major impact. And definitely this pandemic have affected our industry more than ever. And clearly it has been responsible of the drop, not only the oil price, but first on the demand. Clearly the worldwide demand of oil have dropped. And this has been actually a very interesting because we have seen how important the aviation sector is. By having all the airlines almost stopped and nobody traveling, clearly was the first factor that affected this huge oil demand. So definitely the airline business definitely has been one of the more hit, but also one of the triggering factor for this rapid drop of oil price. Now, clearly, what we are right now is that we are in a situation with too much oil. We have too much oil that not even knowing where to put it. We have actually the number of ships offshore with oil. It's amazing. Every single oil producing country have ships that are floating offshore and clearly not knowing the destination to take the oil. And clearly one thing that we need to be very realistic is that the year 2020 and the year 2021 are lost years. I mean, we should be very realistic. For anybody who thinks that in 1-2 months everything will go to normality, I think they should rethink it. And we need to have an approach in which we are realistic and we understand the damage that all that pandemic have done. And clearly 20 and 2021 have to be a rethinking year for all of us. And definitely 2022 has to be the comeback year. And that's the way that I see it regarding worldwide our oil and gas industry. Regarding our continent, I personally don't, I want to say it's bad. I mean, and we all are taking precautions, but I do believe that this pandemic is a new opportunity for the African continent. It's a new opportunity because there is an opportunity in which the already historical operators, some of them they are leaving, especially service. So you are leaving countries with the resources, having to realize, first of all, that nobody's there to do it and you have to do it yourself. So this is a new opportunity for African entrepreneurs, for African really go-getters to think that for the first time, we maybe are gonna have to operate our installation ourselves. This is a fear that we always had. You know, maybe we need the expatriate, we need a different other people. So now we could be in a situation in which we need to operate our installation ourselves rather than just wait for the pandemic to end. So again, it's a great opportunity, but with a great opportunity, we also need to be realistic that we need to be flexible. The flexibility has to do because you don't want the company to leave. You don't want no company to go either dead or broke. You want the company to survive. And this is why you need to understand how companies suffer. Exploration companies, you don't want an exploration company to venture into a drilling campaign this year when you know that drilling campaign could really destroy the entire balance sheet of that company. So you need to be able to be flexible and give an extensions. And whenever you're talking about producing, you need to think about too. Some of the work that you were supposed to be doing this year, maybe you have to postpone it for 1 year. So that flexibility needs to be done, and government needs to understand that it needs to be done if you want from the long term this industry to survive. Now regarding Equatorial Guinea, and this is why I'm here and why they pay my salary, is to be able to talk about white people. I think 2020 and 2021 definitely for us is going to be a research and development year. I don't really see the only project that I see going forward and concluding is the backfilling project, because all the equipments are in country. We already put in all the pipelines. Noble Energy and Marathon are already doing the work. So in fourth quarter of this year, we'll have additional gas for LNG and for AMCO. So that project definitely is not going to be hindered. The personnel are in country, so we can do. But the rest of the other projects, I have to say that the 20 and 2021 are going to be a research and development year. We're going to be doing more studies, evaluations, and we will be more flexible, avoiding companies to do huge, in a way, huge investment in infrastructure and the rest. So the key thing for us is that we need to think how we can do that. Now, what we also are doing this year, and I'm going to be doing it this week, are going to be the new legislations. Now, one of the legislation that we are going to push forward are going to be the limitation of expatriates. Some people will say, you know, what makes sense? You know, there's not a lot of expatriates. The majority have lived because of the COVID-19. Now, the issue is the following, because again, this is done in Angola, it's done in Nigeria, and we need to work on, I don't want to call it a local content nationalization, but we need to encourage more the service industry to be able to take responsibility and be prepared for the rebound. Now, this is a great opportunity for this national company to be prepared for that rebound. I do believe it's important, and that limitation of expatriate will be for 3 years. it will not be retroactive, so it will start from this year. So any expatriate who has been working in Equatorial Guinea will be in country for 3 years, and after that, like it's done in Angola or in Nigeria, the places we have to look at a place to work to give more opportunity for nationals or other individuals to be able to have that post. The other regulation that we're going to be working, that also I'm planning to launch this week, it is the mineral petroleum regulations. Last year, we were approved by the Parliament and Senate the new mining code, and that new mining code now needed regulations. We have approved this regulation, we'll launch it, mainly because we also need to be diversification in that resource. We need to make sure that we focus as much in oil as also in mining. And we want to use a lot of our know-how in oil, in mining. And mining, of course, it needs a lot of local participation, local workers. So definitely that's going to be a key thing that are going to allow that a lot of the workers in the oil industry for different reasons that had to be either reduced or either their activity are not working, they will be able to save to go into mining depending on the interest. So we are not going to force anybody to leave oil to go mining, but that will be a new opportunity for them. And the last legislation that we are going to promote, it's going to be done next month. It's going to be the new petroleum regulation. Now, the new petroleum regulation are going to be incorporated aspect regarding refining and aspect regarding petrochemics. Now, this is really what we believe is going to be the future for our oil and gas industry. The refining and downstream is king because that can create a lot of jobs, but also it's about time that we use our entire resources to be processed in country. With the refiner, we can process the oil. We can also do processing for gas. And at the same time, petrochemics, using both the mining, but also the petroleum, we actually can develop to have added value for that. So clearly, one of the things that I am pushing a lot to all my industry, and this is with the IOC, with the NOC, are 3 key messages that are very important for us. The first one is our shareholder value. We need to maintain our shareholder value. The companies do it through their shareholders. For me, it's for the people of Equatorial Guinea, it's for the treasury to make sure that we still generate revenue. Second one are people. We need to make sure that our people are safe. And these are, they can work in a way that they're safe from COVID-19, they're safe for any dangers, and we need to make sure that operations are safe. And the last one is relationship. We need to be able to work relationship with IOC and AOC to make sure that we are, and understand that we are in the same boat. This is not government, this is not IOC, we are together. We need to make sure that we make sacrifices, they also make sacrifices, so at the end we all survive. This is clearly the key introduction that I wanted to give. I am not here just to talk and tell everybody what I think, what I'm going to do. I'm coming here because also it's a platform that also I can hear questions, but also observations and recommendations that I can have from the industry and third party. And I have done, this is my second web seminar. The first one was a very successful one, was able to receive feedback by the local companies. And I will continue doing this because this is definitely a new approach. This does not mean that I will not travel after the COVID pandemic ends. I still will travel, go to conference, but definitely after that, I will keep using a lot of the video conference and this because definitely it's very helpful for operation for the rest. So again, these are my introduction. And one more time, I want to thank everybody who has been involved to make sure that we could do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, His Excellency. Thank you for the overview that you have given us. And I'm going to take you back to the first topic of our discussion that has to be with the generality of the oil markets. And as you know, the global oil and gas industry is experiencing a crisis like we've never seen before, with the drop of the global energy demand because of the COVID-19. And that is pushing the oil prices down. So I want to ask His Excellency, how do you see the OPEC Plus deal combined with efforts from G20, bringing supply and demand into alignment? How do you see that?
Okay, I think first of all, we cannot have a quick solution. And when we have the March meeting and when we have the historic decisions last month for the OPEC plus, we always have something in the back of our heads. The other collapse of prices were always because of a factor. The last one we have in 2014, 2015 was mainly because we had a new sector, and this was the shale industry in the United States. It was actually coming very strong regarding the production. So definitely it was something that we could immediately identify, talk about it, and fix it. Now, the current situation is much different. You don't know how long this pandemic will be. Some people say 1 month, some people say 3 months, some people say 1 year. So that uncertainty is very difficult. And the other issue that I have already mentioned is that this pandemic has hit one of the more important sectors for our industry. This is the airline business. By the airline business completely stopping completely, it really have a very strong effect on the rest of the other pricing. So clearly what OPEC plus, what G20 can do is monitor. We cannot control what happened. We can monitor, we can advise, but the monitoring has to be done with the understanding, because it needs to be jointly with the scientific. We need to know if this pandemic is going to be something that is going to be longer, the lockdown, or is going to be fixed immediately. The other issue that I have to be very realistic and honest is that the pandemic have hit each one of the country in a different way. So it's not going to be in 1 month fixed. You know, each one of the country will make a decision how long we'll have the lockdown. And then the other issue that we have is that there's too much oil. Even if it is open immediately, refineries are having a serious problem to be able to use. So I think what the OPEC Plus and what G20 are doing are helping. We are taking oil out of the market, definitely. But at the same time, what we can do is monitor. The monitoring is one of the more important parts that we need to continue doing, because definitely we don't know how long this is going to last. Maybe it could last for 1 day, maybe it can last to the other day. But definitely the key thing is that we do that in a semi-crop. So clearly what we can do at this stage is that we need to make sure that we all work together. And there is some analysts that clearly already know that clearly the other issue that we could have is that, like I said, we don't really know how long it's going to be. And it could be for 1 month, it could be with the other one. But the issue here is that we all have been affected. I'll give you a very good example. 2 days ago, I meet, actually Saturday, we have a issue at the Serpentina platform in which we have 30 infected workers. This was scaffolders, and we isolated all of them in the platform, and we successfully exported transported the workers back to onshore, and right now they are under treatment. We are going to go into a cleaning of the platform. Production have not been affected, and we don't believe they are affected. We are taking a new measures in which we will do a testing of all the work offshore too. But clearly, like I say, what OPEC Plus, what G20 can do is really monitor, and what we have to do is the monitoring month by month, and depending on what we see, we'll see how that's going to be affected. But at this moment, it's very difficult. Any measures that we do, what is going to happen, because again, there's too much oil in the world.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. So bringing it down to Equatorial Guinea, what is Equatorial Guinea's role in these global discussions? What are your goals as you engage with your fellow OPEC ministers and energy ministers from around the globe?
Okay, first of all, Equatorial Guinea is an African country. It's a small country, and as an African country and a small country, we have a voice. Now, when we are in the meeting of OPEC, we don't speak on the voice of the big producer. We speak on the voice of the small producers. We make sure that the big producer understand that there is players like us, country like us, that we have small production. And we need to make sure that those big players understand that if they are hurt, they could just imagine how we are hurting. So clearly our voice are there. We have some small African producers, we are there. But at the same time, there is one thing that I keep saying in all the conference. where is the continent with the largest number of new discoveries and development? This is the African continent. You know, the US, these are all discoveries, rather than new ones. So for me, I want to reiterate that our voice are loud and clear. When I'm in OPEC, I discuss all these discussions with, I make all these discussions with other players, and I'm very happy because they actually listen and they understand that it is very important to take in consideration the African countries, but also small producers like Equatorial Guinea.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. So how are African oil producers being impacted by the drop in oil and gas prices?
Well, the first one is that some of the African producers like Equatorial Guinea, we are the main, and I will call it the main provider of funds to the national budget. So clearly our production, our work are clearly one of the biggest indicators of the budget. So you could imagine little Equatorial Guinea when we have almost 90% of our revenue comes from oil and gas. That definitely we need to go back into the drawing room regarding the budget. A lot of the projects that we already were planning to do have to be put on hold. One of the things that Equatorial Guinea have done is that we have already stopped all new capital investment projects. So all new projects have been completely stopped. We have maintained all the social projects, all the development, clearly that are important for the people, but all new projects, all new development has been stopped. So clearly, this is not only the case of Equatorial Guinea, it is the case of other African producer countries, and we are all doing the same thing. We are cutting on those new projects, and we're just making sure that we can provide for the social needs on the budgets alone.
Okay. Are they other African countries facing unique challenges because of this COVID-19 compared to other regions?
Well, I think in Africans we have a big difference, and sure to say is because Africa have already gone through different pandemic. We have the continuously what we call a pandemic or situation of malaria. We have the Ebola. We have other Lassa, all the disease. So I have to say that a lot of the big difference between the sanitaries in a lot of countries in Africa and other countries in Europe and the rest is that a lot of our personnel have already have experience to deal one-to-one with individuals that have this situation of infected, having to be in a hospital when you have many people coming at the same time for some sicknesses. So that has been one of the key area that we have experienced. Of course, clearly for our industry, it's going to affect us. It's not an issue. We need to continue with the activity. A lot of the work depends on this activity. But like I said, it's also when there is a problem, there's an opportunity. And I think a lot of the expatriates and the rest of people who have left the country have left a vacuum. And that vacuum needs to be used by those nationals that stay behind. And those nationals now have a responsibility to be able to do that job, because you have to remember some areas will stay longer. We don't know how long Europe will be locked down. We don't know how long America will be locked down, or either Asia. And maybe they will still need the resources because the flow of resources can continue. So we need to make sure that the local industry understand that this is their opportunity. They need to be able to be prepared to take over on those activities that service company, expatriate have left to be able to use. So again, this is how I believe the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting a lot of the African countries.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. And now moving on to our second topic, which has to do with this global rebound that we want to talk about. Oil and gas projects globally and across the continent are being delayed and cancelled. How can the government work with the private sector to make sure these projects stay viable? How do you think projects should be prioritized as funding tightens?
Well, the first thing that everybody needs to be is, like I said before, you need to be realistic. And the realistic situation is that There are many projects that actually could stop, will be canceled, and will never happen again. Now the question is, what can you do to make sure that that doesn't happen? First one, you need to be flexible. You need to remember that when those projects were sanctioned, they were sanctioned with factors that at this moment we don't have. So one of the key things that I will recommend, we are doing it in our country, is that you need to sit down again with the operator. You need to sit down again with the companies. And you need to be able to go back into the drawing room and being able to see what are the factors who have changed. And depending on the change of the factors, then you can go back and be able to save those projects. Because if anybody is very strict, saying, well, the contract is the contract, I cannot change it, that's really it's a solution that it will take everybody to the ground and bankruptcy. And you don't want the companies to go broke. You don't want the countries to lose that project. So I think flexibility needs to be done in all of them, and it needs to be done now. It's not you have to wait, maybe after 1 month things improve or they not improve. The situation needs to be done as soon as possible. I'll give you an example. Equatorial Guinea, the majority of our decisions are going to be done this week. We'll make all the decisions regarding oil and gas, extensions, projects, the rest this week. So later we'll evaluate how it's going to be affected, but we're not going to be waiting for 1 or 2 months to see how the decision we make this way, because from our experience, we need to make sure to give a breathing air to the operator, breathing air to the companies, because you still need the local companies to be able to survive.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, His Excellency. Equatorial Guinea is one of the most established oil producers in Africa and has experienced several boom and bust cycles in the oil industry. What have you learned from these cycles, and how has the 2014 price drop prepared Equatorial Guinea and the industry for this time?
Well, first of all, everybody believes that Equatorial Guinea is an experienced historical production, but in reality, we are one of the last one. We only have 2 experiences, this one and the 2014. But what we learned in 2014, 2015 is that you need to act quick. I'll give you the first example, exploration. You immediately need to make sure to save the exploration companies. So you don't have to even think about it. You need to give extension to the companies. Even tell companies, even if they want to drill, they have the program to drill, it's better to make sure that those companies save their money. You don't want them to go in this situation that can have a drilling, and maybe it could be successful, not successful, because it doesn't matter what happened. If it is successful, you're not going to be able to develop it. And if it is unsuccessful, you lost all the money. So it's better to actually give them the extension, tell them don't do anything, just go into the research and development, and maybe next year you do the drilling. That's even much better because you can even keep jobs going forward. Regarding production, the same thing. If you already have some projects that you wanted to do and are not necessary, don't do it. Don't go into the painting of the FPSO, don't do the new life extension, because that's not going to be helping you this year. So you can postpone all that work to next year. Definitely that's going to be very important, because what you need to do now is save cash. You need to save cash for the government, save cash for the companies. And this has been the experience. This is why for us, for this week is critical. We need to make sure companies like Marathon, ExxonMobil, they save cash. Liquidity is very important at this moment, because the last thing that you want is any of those companies to actually go broke or decided that it's not economic to work with them. So it is your role to make sure that they are safe. So the same thing happened with the local company, but the local company need to understand that it is not the government to go there and hand them funds. That's not always the more thing. This is just patching. What you need to do is you need to be able to see how you can create a joint benefit. I'll give you an example that, for example, Malaysia and Indonesia have done for many years, and we learn. You can get service company. You tell service company, don't fire your people. I'll give you a condition. You don't fire your people, and we'll give you some tax incentive. So that way, some of those service companies keep all those people in this period rather than fire them. So that allowed that we avoid to have a social impact in keeping that companies in a way and those individuals with a job. That is very important. So clearly, it's very important the decision of the government, especially our ministries. We need to make quick decisions, because we need to make sure that we save what we call it the goose that give us the golden goose, the golden eggs. Because if you don't do that, and then you obligate them to drill them well, you are killing it. Then if you kill it, you won't have no more golden eggs, and then it will be the end. So just give them a breathe, take them to go rest. So by next year, they give you more golden eggs, and then you can continue.
Excellent.
Right. So I'm gonna. Yeah, real quickly, because we're getting some questions from the audience that I would like to bring up. And we also ran a poll. So before we talk a little bit more about you know, kind of individual countries rebounding and what that looks like, I want to go back just a minute to what is really necessary for the global market to rebound. There's obviously this big disparity between supply and demand right now. So our poll, we asked the members of the webinar, do you believe additional production cuts are needed to stabilize the oil markets during COVID-19? And 82% of respondents said yes. So, and we're also getting questions from the Q&A box about if OPEC Plus is having further discussions about additional production cuts. And also what is needed from the G20 if there's going to be a further push for specific, you know, regulated or mandated cuts, specific numbers, and if that kind of action would stabilize the market further, in your opinion.
Well, I thank you for the question and for everybody for the review, and I understand why everybody said that we need to cut on production. But I also want people to understand our nature of our industry. The first one, if we wanted to rapidly go back into the regular price, $40, $60, the first thing that we need to do, every single oil and gas producer in the world have to stop. We need to stop complete the production. Everybody needs to stop. If we all stop with the stock that we have already in storage, we can keep that. But there is a problem. Some producers cannot do it. I mean, if you're in Saudi Arabia or you're in Emirates, you are in the desert. You have a well, if you want to stop it, you just go there and just stop it. Some countries like us, that we have the conventional, this is offshore, this is a well undersea. Some of the production comes from pressure. So if we actually stop, our umbilical will actually collapse. The same thing will lose our pressure. So clearly, some people, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm going to reduce 40% or do that. That's easy. They're going to computer, they press, like you have Russia, the rest. But there's other countries, we cannot do that. What we can do is, of course, we can be able to hinder a little bit on our production, but we cannot stop completely our production. So one of the things that is very important is to be able to see what other products or other projects that we can do. One of them is to discuss about downstream. Because clearly, what we are seeing at this moment, we need to see where we can send the oil. But one thing that had to be very clear for a lot of people, that stop production immediately, for some people is easy, but some people is very more difficult to do that. Then there is other big advantage. Some countries that are oil producers also have refineries. So all that cut that they say that they are making, they are using it in their own refineries. So small producers like us, other producers like in Congo, like in Gabon, and like the rest, you know, we can do that. We don't have that huge downstream processing to use. So one of the things that I can suggest is that maybe some of those developed countries, the United States, Russia, Saudi Arabia, maybe they should stop and then allow the little producer like us to keep producing, because still there will be need. I don't think they will agree, but again, we can try, and then hopefully they agree, and then they allow the little producers, and more difficult to do that, to do that. But again, I agree with everybody. The constraint on our production, it will be critical. But the other biggest problem is the monitoring of how the pandemic goes, because it's not just the oil allocation and storage, but also the refineries, they are not selling. Nobody's flying, nobody's driving. So again, it's an issue that it's going to be complicated. We can only do is monitoring. COVID-19 is with us. It will stay for us for a long time. We need to just get used to live it with it. And once people will get much better, then we can start flying again. But at this stage, it's not a quick and easy solution on just stopping production, because it requires more than that.
Of course, it's very, very complex. When WTI dropped to negative, well, I think negative 37 last week, I think there was a lot of anxiety and a realization that this is definitely not going to be a quick recovery. I just want to remind everybody on the webinar, if you have a question, can you please put it in the Q&A box and not in the chat. So the chat is just for kind of discussions amongst the audience members, and the Q&A box is where we're monitoring to get your questions to His Excellency. And on that note, we'll move to another question, which you've addressed a little bit, especially in the short term, that 2020 and 2021 are kind of lost years. But what is your outlook for the oil sector for the short, medium, and long term as we move forward?
We need to tighten our belts. I mean, we need to cut a lot of things that are not necessary. We need to sit down with the industry. We need to be able to see how we can manage. The best way to say is the following. Sometimes crises like this are opportunities because, excuse my example, but I use it a lot. It's like a swimming pool in which everybody wants to go swimming, everybody's in the pool, and then somebody decides to take the water out. And then when you take the water out, you know who have underwear and who doesn't have underwear. And the people who doesn't have underwear, they are people who are not really, didn't know how this industry works. They are the people not prepared. They are the people who just jump in those industry thinking, I want to make a quick money. Those are not the conventional oil drillers. So what is going to happen is that only the real oil men and women will survive. The ones who have that no experience, they will actually go away. They will realize this is a business that I lost a lot of money. I don't want to go back. And this is example what happened in the shale. I mean, the biggest problem that shale is going to have is finding funds, because with this experience, very few bankers and very few people with funds will be willing to go back into that adventure to be able to lose it that quick. But the people who are the conventional oil like us, we realize that it happens. It used to be every 10 years, and then it moved to 5 years. Now it's every 3 years. But we all know that cycles in the oil industry goes like this. So anybody who has been for a long time in the oil and gas industry realize that now it's going to be a fade time. Some of the excess people are going to have to go. Some people go bankruptcy. Some projects continue. The project that makes no sense, they stop. But the ones who have been using the conceptual and historical oil and gas fundamental, they will survive. And definitely we are having, right now the summer is coming, then you have the winter. Hopefully with the good weather, we have a very strong winter and people will be in the house. They will use a lot of electricity, and then electricity needs a lot of fuels and the rest. So definitely it could be a rebound, short-term rebound. But in the meantime, we need to be mingled. We need to be able to be economic and use oil and gas fundamentals to be able to survive. And like I said, oil and gas historical men and women will survive, but the ones who have been in this new industry and new business, unfortunately to say, they will fade away and they will not survive.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Equatorial Guinea, along with many other African states, are in the process of diversifying the economy away from oil production. So how has COVID and the drop in oil prices impacted that process? And where is Equatorial Guinea at on diversification, and what are the next steps to prioritize?
Okay, well, I'm a Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons, so my diversification is going to be on mine and hydrocarbons. I cannot speak on solar, I cannot speak on winds. That's other ministry who is in charge of that. Clearly, Equatorial Guinea is an oil and gas producing country. We depend 90% of oil. We're going to continue producing the oil. But one thing that is going to be critical, and we're working very hard on it, we have been focusing on the upstream and some of the midstream. We need the downstream. This is why last week we announced the awarding of the contract to start doing the study for the refinery. Downstream and petrochemics are going to be our focus. We are going to go very aggressively to make sure not only small scale refinery, but also bigger refinery. These are going to be one of our critical areas that we're going to be focusing. Petrochemics is going to be the same thing for the using of gas. We have LNG, we have condensate, we have methanol. We do believe that more derivative can be created for it. So clearly one of our solutions are going to be that diversification in the oil and gas. Now, clearly, we also believe that diversification has to come because of the renewable, both with solar, also with wind. I think there is a mixing that can be done with all of them, but we need to be also be realistic that some of the diversification that we're going to be focusing are going to be on this sector to make sure that it can provide and support the other one. Of course, renewable is there. I know everybody's talking now, this is the time of renewable. I have to disagree. This is the worst time for renewable because oil is so cheap that right now it's actually to produce, it's much cheaper to produce electricity with oil than with wind and with solar. So again, the renewables should be praying that the oil price go up, because if the oil price stay like it is, I have to tell you, renewable is going really in the wrong directions, and definitely it's going to be very difficult for them to compete because again, oil is extremely cheap.
Perfect. So we're going to switch a little bit now. We're going to get back into some questions from the audience. And we're also having a lot of questions about the kind of the downstream diversification, which we've just addressed, but also mining, which you've brought up as being a priority moving forward. So one of the questions from the audience is, has there been a market study to determine what percentage of GDP could go to mining? And then just to kind of add on that, you know, what specific sectors are you prioritizing, and how quickly do you see that progressing in today's environment?
I think an oil-producing country like Equatorial Guinea have a great advantage. And the advantage is the experience that we have in the oil and gas. One of the critical things in all this exploitation of resources is information, is data. And one of the things that we learn in the oil and gas is that you need to be able to shut your seismic, you need to be able to process your information, and then you bring the company. You don't bring the company and you allow them to do all these things. So one of the things that we did already is that we already have signed the seismic, we already have done some of the research and development, we already have done the geology. So when the companies come, not only we already know the amount of resources that we have for that specific mining, but we also are very clear with them in one thing. That mineral resource will be processed in country. Now, if you're an oil producer, you have a refinery, and you have power, you definitely know that power is going to be one of the critical things. So if a lot of those mining companies already know that they're going to be able to produce the gold, the bauxite, the rest, but also they will be able to have electricity in country, and they will be able to have the chemical to produce, we will end up exporting a value-add product that is actually give us a higher value than rather than export the raw material. So again, we believe that experience in oil is going to be extremely positive one. We are going to probably in 1 month launch a new mineral seismic in the entire country with the Russian company Rosgeo. We expect in 6 to 8 months to be able to conclude that. That will allow that not only we'll be able to know better our geology in the coast, but also we will focus on 2 key resources. One is gold, and the other one is the bauxite. And both of them are very important for the achievement of doing processing, because both of them need a lot of electricity to process. So we are planning also to build power plants using either gas, LNG, or either fuel oil to be able to provide electricity, cheap electricity for that industry. So that's how we are going to capture, not only inviting the company to process, but also do the processing in country.
Excellent, thank you, Your Excellency. Talking about the whole of the African continent, how do you think Africa can stay competitive in a post-COVID-19 market? How can Africa stay competitive?
Well, I think what people need to also be realistic is that Africa has been always competitive. We have every single resource in the world, in our continent. We have the cheapest fiscal terms. We have the cheapest and most interesting countries to come. Now, that excuse that Africa is not competitive is not true. I mean, go to Malaysia, go to Indonesia, go to the United States, and it's actually harder. The biggest profit that companies have done has been on continent. And one of the reasons is because, again, we are the convention for the oil. Look right now, you have Senegal, Ghana, Liberia, Mozambique, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya. These are all new African countries with the resources. And clearly, what I call it, the conventional oil and gas is cheaper than doing the shale gas. So it's much simple. It's just what it has been taught all the time. You go there, you drill the well, you produce raw energy. So we already are competitive. The problem is that we have never been really in the business. And this is what I say our great opportunity. We can take charge of our industry for the first time because now we are constrained to be in our country. So we could take this opportunity and to be able to be like Malaysia and to be able to be like Indonesia, to be able to take our resources and not just be involved in the extracting of the resources, but being in the processing for downstream, but also being in the marketing, because very few African countries are involved in the marketing. Where our oil is going? Oh, we know these traders sending this place, or they're sending, but we don't really have a strong cooperation that we can say that we really control our resources. And this is the opportunity that we can take, because at this moment, there's not a Lufthansa flying every day to come here and to give us a deal. It's going to take a while. So it gives us an opportunity for us to sit down and evaluate what we can do to be able to take forward our resources. Remember, in Equatorial Guinea, for example, as another one, we have some marginal fields. And these are mature fields, not marginal fields. Mature fields that still have potential. And we need to go into the next phase, and this is the enhanced oil recovery or going to new type of contracts. You have the technical assistant contract that what it does is like a joint venture. So it's not anymore one come and get a concession. You come, you sign with the government. So again, if you increase that plateau, you share. If you don't increase the plateau, that's your loss. So again, there are many opportunities that we have at this moment. That's why I insist that this is a great opportunity for Africa oil and gas producers to be able to take charge of their industry and being able to come strong, because it depends what you do in the pandemic on how you're going to be getting out.
Perfect. We're also getting a lot of questions about local content. So if we can kind of switch to that, that side. One of the questions talks about unemployment being very high right now in Europe and the US. And just wondering, you know, how has COVID-19 affected unemployment in Equatorial Guinea, and what are some of the immediate strategies to avoid huge job losses and save jobs in the country?
Well, I am, just to say a little bit, going into politics, I am more a Republican and a Democrat in terms of comparing. I believe that you cannot save somebody who cannot be saved. So if a company has not been running successfully, they have the right to fail. But if a company has been successful and you actually can do something how it could survive, you should do it. Now, that does not mean that I agree that some companies should go bankruptcy, they don't know what to do. What I'm saying is that this is the time that what I call it a nationalization of local content. Now, I am not saying that we are taking by force. We are saying that because of this situation, every single local content job should be 100% national. That's what I'm saying. Because of this situation, every single contract that all the IOCs are providing should be given to the locals. Because the locals need to be able to survive. Those contracts that for any reason you sign for this company from the US, Singapore, the rest, you need to give it to the local. You need to give it to the local so it can continue and maintain those national companies to be there. Because if you give hand up, it's not going to help. It's like somebody who's hungry, you give him some food. You know, tomorrow he's going to come back and say, Excellency, I need more food. But again, if you teach him to do something, being able to survive it. And this is one of the key things you have to remember. This is what the US is doing. Why do you think the US have prohibited all the green cards to come into the US? The US have done it because they don't want qualified workers to go to the US. Then we have a right to do the same thing. Every single job contracts should be given to local companies. In Equatorial Guinea, we are going to do this. So every single one, because these are producing assets, they already are making money. So those are the things that need to be done. It's not good to look at a solution that a chunk of money that you're going to save. And I'll tell you the truth. Unfortunately, what in the US is being done, that's not the Republican way. A real Republican president will never have done something like that. Because again, you have to allow the market to be able to survive. There is some companies in the shale industry who will go bankruptcy. They were losing money already, but there's other one who will survive. The same thing happened with the service. But again, sometimes the playing level field is not the same. Some local companies, and including Equatorial Guinea, don't have the same advantages that expected would. So this is the time. This is the time to call the IOCs and tell them, listen, we are through the pandemic, nobody's moving, and we don't want operation to stop. So you know what you're gonna do? Every single contract that you have, you're gonna give it to local companies. And if any contract the local company cannot do it, you're gonna help him to do it. That's gonna allow that local company to keep giving jobs to the people. We live here, maybe we already have COVID-19, but we still need to continue working. So again, we are not gonna stop and be in the home, not doing anything. We need to continue working, doing the activity. And this is what happened in a lot of African countries. Sometimes in our body, we have malaria, some other people have other sickness, but we're still working because you need to cope living with that disease. And this is what a lot of people believe, that they're waiting for the vaccine, because when the vaccine will come, COVID-19 will disappear. COVID-19 is not gonna disappear. It's gonna stay for us for a long time. We just need to learn how to live with it.
Thank you, His Excellency. In view of everything that you have said, that you have explained, can you tell us how our local content will change under the new legislations you have highlighted, and how that will impact both international oil companies and local service companies?
The first petroleum regulation that we did, it included three important things. For the first time, we selected 3 sectors that needed to be 100% Equatorial Guinea. That was catering, that was manpower, hire on personnel, and I think it was landscaping. Those 3 sectors needed to be 100% Equatorial Guinea. Now, with this new legislation that was done 5 years ago, there's going to be a long list of contracts and projects that have to be 100% Equatorial Guinea. And this is on the sector of upstream, on the sector of downstream, this is refining, and in the sector of petrochemical. Those are the key things. Because, for example, if we're gonna need engineering, we are not gonna hire somebody from outside to do engineering. If we're gonna need civil engineering to do all the concrete, we're not gonna hire nobody. So all that petroleum regulation, they're gonna be clearly all that. The biggest difference between having a local content law and a petroleum regulation that you keep changing the local content is that the petroleum regulation, you can change it year to year. Local content law, once you have a local content, you cannot change it. You need to go back to the parliament. And this is the biggest advantage that we have when we have a petroleum regulation that can monitor, because next year I can change it again. So again, I can be gradually doing it according of what the ministry is doing. So we do not have a local content law. We do believe that that's a very bureaucratic way of doing it. We do have a petroleum regulation that keep changing the local content because of that. I'll give you an example. Right now we are with the pandemic. It's a completely different situation than 2019. For 2020, our change in local content is going to change. Definitely there's going to be more sectors that we're going to be including that has to be 100% Equatorial Guinea. So those are the things that we have done, and that legislation is going to help on that. And we will be very specific regarding the sectors. And again, there will be also sanctions, and the company will know that if you hire somebody who is not a local content company for doing this job, and we discover that, then you will be sanctioned.
So you've mentioned that, of course, COVID-19 is in Equatorial Guinea. What is being taken, and a lot of the expats have left, what actions are being taken to ensure that that crews are safe or not getting COVID-19, to ensure that production continues, that maintenance continues, that safety continues, and that kind of thing?
Okay, when you say a lot of expats have left, I don't want to speak on the oil and gas industry, because if I have done the calculation, probably only 15% of the oil and gas industry have left. The rest are still working with us. And we do have a couple of advantages. First of all, we are a small country. So when we actually did the lockdown, it was done between the continental part and the island. In the island of Malabo, we are 200,000 people, roughly. So again, any issue that we have is actually much easier to manage. Then the other biggest advantage that we have, it has given a lot of confidence to the industry, is that we have actually a huge malaria project that we were working on, the new vaccine of malaria. And that project invested heavily on personnel, on testing, and a lot of equipment. This actually has been the lab that we have. Even before, a lot of African countries have labs to be able to do the PCR test for COVID-19. We already had it. All our tests are done by PCR. I mean, this is not the quick test, because the quick tests still have problems. But the PCR tests are actually the best. This is what the Koreans actually are doing. The other thing that we have done is that we have this collaboration between the oil industry, the Ministry of Mines, and the Ministry of Health. One of the things that we keep insisting is that we need to be able to do the quarantine. The quarantine that is done, it is a quarantine that benefits also the workers, because whenever we have a worker who is actually have been tested positive, which are symptoms, we immediately isolate them, and then they have a camp, a specific camp where those workers are. The same thing happened with the workers that actually going offshore. What we do is that they stay in a specific camp for 14 days, even nationals, they stay 14 days in the camp, and whenever that 14 days is finished without symptoms, then they go offshore. The other key thing that we are actually doing jointly with the government is that we already have organized a special hospital for nationals who actually have the COVID-19 to be able to do that. And insisting on one thing, when you have been positive in COVID-19, it doesn't mean that you need to go immediately to the hospital. It means that you need to be recovered and follow your symptoms. You need to go home. And that's one of the things that I have to say advantage a lot of African countries, because we saw the experience in China, we saw the experience in Europe. So by the time we are having it, we already are seeing the mistakes and the do and the don'ts. And one of the big don'ts is do not go to the hospital because you have the symptoms. You know, you need to be able to test yourself, because you have to be able to know who are the individuals who are actually more propense to have problems. In Equatorial Guinea, even though we have a death, they are saying that it's a death by COVID-19. Yes, the individual actually have COVID-19, but also he have other problems, related problems. So that issue is 50-50, I would say. We haven't had no death yet because of a respiratory problem. And again, maybe it had been because of our antibody, because malaria. Maybe it could be like some people say because of the heat. Other people say ultraviolet lights. But again, in the oil and gas industry, I would say only 15% have actually left. The rest are still here. I join them. If they really want to leave, everybody's free to leave. That will be even better for local content nationalization, so we can give more contracts to our nationals. But again, I think they feel very comfortable on how we are managing things. Again, not everything is at the like of everybody. Everybody keep complaining, but I have to say what both the hospital La Paz, the hospital Sampaca, the rest have been doing has been very successful. We are managing right now local infection. There is not imported infection anymore. So clearly, at the same time that it is very important, we also have put in place special assistance programs whenever we have emergency. So for example, if anybody have any serious accident in the platform of ExxonMobil or Marathon, they fly by helicopter to either La Paz in Malabo or even La Paz in Bata. So that has been the issue that we're doing. Testing is the more important thing. We continue with the testing. We already have done 3,400 tests, in which 250 has been positive, the rest of them negative. We are continue bringing more kits to do the testing. Our objective is to test every single individual in Equatorial Guinea. We are focusing on the island. There is 200,000 people. We expect before June we will be able to do that, but also we need to continue the testing in the continental part. But I have to say that we are trying to manage, and we are doing pretty good. But again, the experience of our personal sanitary experience with other problems like malaria and the rest are very helpful on that. So that's pretty much what we are doing regarding the fight and controlling of COVID-19.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Our next question is, what downstream projects are being prioritized by Equatorial Guinea and why? Did you hear the question? Hello?
Okay, I didn't hear you. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I'll repeat it again. What downstream projects are being prioritized by Equatorial Guinea and why?
Well, the reason is we already had that in mind. And we had that in mind because last year we have two serious disruption on refined products in country. And we promised ourselves that that will never happen again. And oil and gas producing country that have problems to supply to gas station, it's really a very bad signal. So what we have done is we are focusing on doing a small scale, 5,000 barrels per day refinery in the island. This is enough for our own consumption. But then we have a second project, and the second project is going to be in the continental part. We do believe it's about time to use our own resources in country. So we're going to be using our condensate of Alba to be able to process there. We will be able to use for gasoline and for diesel. For the continental part, we're going to increase more the other products that we do. But for us, it's going to be the critical part. This is a time that we do believe that we need to put in place the infrastructure and the development to start using our own resource. At the beginning, we needed to put the infrastructure in place. We already have the infrastructure. And we are talking the example that countries like Malaysia did it. You know, they were actually exported and they become imported. So right now we are seriously going forward. It's not only refinery, it's petrochemics, it's bunkering. So that's going to be our focus. We are not going to stop because of the pandemic, like you have seen. We have awarded the contract for the study and feasibility study. We are going to start probably, we are hoping by the end, fourth quarter of this year to do the groundbreaking. And this project for us is extremely important because that creates a lot of jobs that will benefit a lot of our population.
So Equatorial Guinea has focused heavily on gas and using gas to diversify the downstream side of the economy. And more and more recently, we've seen, I think, gas, especially the LNG market, separating a bit from the oil market. So in view of kind of how the gas market is kind of leaving a bit the trajectory of oil prices, but taking into consideration COVID-19, what is your view on the current status of the LNG market and how it's going to be impacted in the short and long term?
I think it will be impacted much positive. I think a transition from oil to gas and mainly LNG was already on moving. Now definitely it's going to go faster because again, a lot of more countries will be utilizing their LNG regasification plant. Oil, there's no way to put it, but the difference, LNG, once you put it in the storage, you immediately burn it, and it's burned for petrochemics, it's burned for electricity, and that's the resource that is used more right now. Even when oil was used, it was used mainly for transportation. Right now, the LNG is the one have been for many years, now using more for electricity. Now, the beauty that we have in Equatorial Guinea about the LNG is that for 2 years, we have been working in a project to be able to utilize our own LNG. Happily to say, we are already have finished all the infrastructure. We already are pulling all the pipeline. And by the end of this year, we'll be able to have the first small-scale LNG regasification plant in country. And that will be very important for one thing. And I saw one of the comments that one of the participants said there is because of power. Power is going to be extremely important for the future development. And the LNG is very important because with LNG, you can be able to transport LNG to anywhere to be able to provide for power. Gas is going to be the key resource for electricity. And even for the electric part, electric car, you need power. Either for new industry, you need power. So power is going to be a critical resource. And for us to be able to develop power in our own country, we need to use gas. That doesn't mean that we cannot use gasoline, diesel, the rest, but it's more cost effective to use the gas, more cheaper to use the gas and this LNG. So again, we will use the resource of oil for other sectors, but the LNG definitely is going to grow rapidly at this moment. There's going to be more use of LNG. And like I said, either in the summer, in the winter, when you need to lose a lot of electricity, you need to look around like heat, you'll be using more LNG and more gas than fuel. So again, The LNG market definitely is going to be moving faster and getting more market share than the oil. But again, there is enough market for everybody. And again, it depends how the demand goes. But the future for LNG looks much brighter than the future for oil.
Thank you, His Excellency. Our next question is, what is the future of frontier exploration in Equatorial Guinea and the Gulf of Guinea? And how can this be prioritized in a low price scenario?
Well, I mentioned it before. What we need to do, we need to save the exploration companies. There is key companies that are very good in exploration. So we need to make sure that those companies don't actually go broke. We need to make sure that they are safe. We need to be flexible with them. And these are exploration companies that they were needed to drill this year. I know everybody likes the drilling. I know everybody wants to find the oil. But like I said, it's not going to help you to have oil discovered this year because you're not going to be able to develop for a long time. So it's good to actually postpone for a while those exploration companies. The potential are huge. I mean, the new deep water areas in Sao Tome and Principe, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, look at South Africa, they are there. The potential is there. So, but the key thing is that not every single oil company are good at drilling. Some companies are good at drilling, some other companies are good at developing. So you need to make sure that we keep safe those drilling companies. I'll give you an example, Cosmos. Cosmos and Tullow are actually a very good exploration companies, and those companies need to be safe. They need to be given as much help because they're very good what they do. And what they do is actually open new frontiers. They're very good in drilling. So, for example, for Cosmos, it's not really a secret. We definitely will give them an extension. We want them to keep drilling. And of course, they're not only working in Equatorial Guinea, also in Sao Tome. So companies like that need to be safe. So we wouldn't like those companies to have financial problem, liquidity problem. We want them to continue and definitely for them to know that the end of 2021, 2022, definitely they have to go back into drilling.
Perfect. So before we move to our last prepared question, I'm going to take one more question from the audience. And I just want to thank our audience members. We received over 40 questions. So unfortunately we can't get to them all, but thank you everybody for contributing your questions. And this is kind of mirroring a poll that we also ran. What projects should be prioritized during the downturn, looking at upstream, midstream, downstream in Equatorial Guinea? And Excellency, I'll tell you that 54% of the respondents said downstream projects should be prioritized. So, what is your view on the priority specifically during the downturn?
I agree 100% with them. I do believe that downstream should be our focus because that's the area that creates jobs. That's the area that definitely can continue forward. Upstream, it's very risky. Not everybody can do it. So you don't want to do the upstream in a situation in which you are limited with funds. Because I'll give you an example. You could maybe need to drill a well that need to be of 1,200 meters. And because you are calculating your liquidity, you realizing you decide rather than go all the way to the 1,400, you decide to just go to the 1,000 to save some money. So again, at this moment, what you need to do is put them on hold, tell them you understand the situation, get them to go back into the research and development, do more geology, do more unrisking of their resources, and then focusing on the downstream. What Africa needs is more downstream. We need more refineries, we need more petrochemics, we need that because clearly our market needs it. We can't just depend on having refined products coming from Europe, from India, from the rest. I mean, I'm very happy what Dangote is doing in Nigeria, but definitely Dangote is going to be pretty busy with the demand in Nigeria. But we need to have more refineries, more petrochemists in Africa because that's going to allow that in our own continent, we'll be able to supply to our markets. And this is definitely a very important part for all of us.
Thank you, His Excellency. Given the current environment, what are the goals for the year of investment for 2020 and beyond? And how important is the year of investment for Equatorial Guinea's rebound?
Well, of course, I would have loved that by this time, everybody was supposed to be here in Equatorial Guinea. We were supposed to be having a conference. We were supposed to be signing a lot of contracts. I'm still signing contracts. Definitely the year of investment is still very important because 2020 and 2019 was the year of energy. And the year of energy was to show to the world what was Equatorial Guinea, what were our potential. 2020 is the year of investment. It's the year that we definitely put money where our mouth is. And definitely we're gonna continue. Definitely 2021 will be the petrochemical year. Why? Because by that time we will already be building those refineries, those projects. But definitely we are not going to throw the towel. We are hopefully about to give surprises to everybody for fourth quarter of this year. If everything gets even better, I'll be able to go to South Africa and present it myself at the Africa Oil Week, or even African Power Week too also. But if not, I still will be very happy to be able to announce by the fourth quarter of this year the different projects that we are going to be doing. For example, the backfilling, we're going to have the first production of backfilling in November. And at the same time, we expect to have the groundbreaking of some of our refinery also in the same period. So year of investment, of course, we could have loved it to go faster, but we do believe that it's going forward. And again, technology like this are allowing to make our job much easier. And I have to say that this pandemic is going to make this work go even faster than we were expecting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Excellency. At this time, we are going to move to the press conference portion of the agenda. So we're going to open up to a few members of the media to ask some specific questions. So first, we're going to have Libby George from Routers. And sorry, for the rest of the media on the phone call, if you haven't yet raised your virtual hand, if you can please do that, or if you're having difficulty finding that feature, if you can just chat in the box so that my colleague Eidener can get you in line for the press conference. But in the meantime, I'm going to unmute Libby. Just a second. Can you hear us, Libby?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking the questions and thank you for the conference. My first question is, how can Equatorial Guinea keep exports going if the Serpentina FPSO needs to be decontaminated? And what is the country doing to make sure that more workers don't fall ill from coronavirus?
First of all, the way the Zafiro or the ExxonMobil installation is designed, there are 3 infrastructures. There is the Serpentina, there is the Zafiro producers, and there is the Jade platform. So the way it's working is that the Jade platform and the Zafiro producer are the one controlling all the well, and the Serpentina is just storage in the oil. So what is going to be happening is that when we do the decontamination, because we need to shut down, there will be a period in which we stop the production, the receiving of products. So that first we're going to be stopping in the well, and then from there we will continue. But in reality, the Serpentina is only the storage. So Serpentina will continue receiving crude from the different well. All this is not affecting neither Jade, neither Zafiro. So in a way, it's not going to be affecting in production. We will only be affected whenever we need to stop it, whenever we have to do something for the storage.
Okay, and how will you make sure that other workers, other offshore workers don't contract the coronavirus and impact production?
Okay, we are doing an investigation to understand what happened. And the first thing that we did is we flew a special team to the Bane laboratory. These are the people who do the PCR tests. They did of 190 PCR tests on the entire Serpentina, but only those 30 were the ones who actually were infected. So the rest of them, they were fine. Now, what we are actually doing is that we're going to be flying the same thing to every single infrastructure in the country. So they will do the full test of all of them, and then from there we'll have a security that none of them are infected. The second thing that will be done from there will be a more rigorous procedures regarding people going in the platform, and especially for the service, because we do believe that the infection happened from some of the service companies who are bringing supply to the platform, to the Serpentina FPSO, sorry. So that's the measure that we're doing. I would say that only 30 of 190 were the one infected, and the rest of them, they're fine. They're continuing with the activity. But again, we are going to make a new move to make sure to test every single one on the Noble installation, on the Trident installations, and any other one in country.
Great, thank you. And if I may, one additional question. How will you keep Equatorial Guinea attractive to international oil companies and international investors amid this pretty historic price downturn that doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon?
I think what I said before, and this is nature, is survival of the fittest. And one of the things that is very important that oil and gas company like is when you have governments and ministry who understand the industry. Government that are not flexible, government who don't understand how they need to engage them, they won't survive. One of the things that the company like countries like Equatorial Guinea, country like Nigeria, even country like Malaysia, is that we already have gone through this before. And all that measures are the ones that are going to be done. And then this is a small industry, they all talk each other. And a lot of them, they say, I wish I was in Equatorial Guinea, because in Equatorial Guinea, they understand the Equatorial Guinea, they take measures. And this is the best example. The first thing that you do with the exploration company, you give them extension. Don't think twice. It's not 6 months extension. You give them 1 or 2 years extension. Nothing is gonna happen. You tell them just stay there, give an extension, don't worry about it. Don't drill right now, drill in 1 year, because it will be a long-term benefit for us. So we believe that attractiveness is shown by the action that we take. And this is what really attracts a lot of them, because they understand that the little country like Equatorial Guinea understand the measures that you need to talk immediately.
Thank you.
I think, Kathy, you are in mute. Kathy, you're in mute. I can't hear you. I can't read lips.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Libby, and thank you, Excellency. Next, we're moving to Eklavya Gupte from Platts. Let me just unmute him.
Hello there.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Your Excellency, for this webinar. I just had a couple of questions. One is on production. You know, has Equatorial Guinea already had to cut production before even the the cuts go into force on Friday? And if so, what is your current crude oil and condensate production? And then my next question was related to the projects on hold. Can you give us some details on which projects are these? Are these the ones related with Cosmos and the others? If you could give us some, some update on which projects in particular, and yeah, basically that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, and they are very important questions. And I agree, we are an OPEC producer, so we have already our obligation or what we agree regarding the production cut. The big difference that we have between Equatorial Guinea and other OPEC members is that Equatorial Guinea, when we talk about cutting productions because of the nature of our geology, what we do a long-term development of this cutting. Some countries could just go to the vault and just close it. In Equatorial Guinea, we do the different evaluation how to do this. First, you need to agree on the MER. This is the maximum efficient rate. From there, you evaluate what are the wells that you want to reduce that is not going to be affecting the production, the pressures, and also having no impact on the pipeline. And from there, you start doing gradually reduction of production. So it's not like today we reduce on that. Our initial reduction is around 90,000 barrels that we were working to do this. Now this is going to be subject on the speed that we can do that reduction of production. We are working with the operator ExxonMobil, Marathon, and Noble Energy, and Trident on how we're going to achieve this. And we have a plan, but it's going to be done gradually, step by steps. Regarding the projects, the backfilling project, this is a project to bring gas to LNG and to methanol. I have no problem. November, it's completely okay. There's no stop on that. Definitely the two discoveries, the 6P, this one done by Noble, this tie-in is being done right now, so also they have no problem. Now, the Ascend discovery, and this is the S9 discovered by Cosmos. we are doing the evaluation, but in reality, it's common sense. It makes no sense for us to tie in that additional discovery when if we start producing by the end of this year, the price is going to be like that. So that's what I said before. We are not in a hurry to produce more. So if we need to postpone, and that's why I'm making a decision, we need to postpone that tie-in to hopefully conclude it by mid next year. We are more than happy to do that. Hopefully that mid next year, the price will be much better than it is right now. So clearly that's clearly the only project that will maybe have a delay. That's the Cosmos one. But again, it's all subject of the discussion that we will have. In this case, Friday, we have a discussion by video conference with Cosmos. But clearly, that's the only project in Equatorial Guinea that is going to be on hold. But it's mainly because both parties, we agree that it makes no sense to tie in that at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Next, we're moving to Ed Reed from Energy Voice. Ed, are you there?
Yep. Hi. Two questions, if I may. Firstly, just a query about the LNG to Africa plan and whether that's sort of still going ahead and whether your sort of partners are still interested in your neighboring countries. And then the second question is about the license round. Obviously, that was concluded last year. And I was just wondering what sort of progress was being made. It sounds like things are probably on hold, but I was wondering maybe you could update us about how quickly or when that might be expected to sort of see some progress. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you for caring for the LNG to Africa. It's good that people are following us regarding this special project that is very dear to myself too. I have a very good news, and the good news is that one of the decisions that we made beginning of 2018 was to lock some of the countries interested in LNG to Africa, but rather than focus on building their terminal in that countries, we decided to build our own terminal in our country to prove that actually could be done. At this current moment, we have all the pipelines that is being connecting the receiving terminal all the way to a cement plant and the power plant. So all the projects going very well. Fourth quarter of this year, we will be able to start doing the commissioning. So I can say by the end of this year, we will be able to achieve for the first time to be able to send LNG from the island all the way to the continental part. Now, once it's done, once that's successful, and that's what we can start to, that's when we can focus on the other neighboring country. We have a new interest from Congo DRC. They seem to be very interested in exporting of LNG for the same use. Of course, our partners from Togo and also for Burkina Faso, landlocked country, also are very keen. All of them, they're on hold. They are all waiting for us to conclude these projects in country. So again, we're going very well. And hopefully, like I said, by the end of this year, I will be able to give you some feedback on that, but we have not stopped that project. Regarding the license round, I think you are right. I think everything is pretty much on hold. And clearly, the noble energy development is going well, and we are in the final negotiation phases. Of course, you will understand that Noble also has been a company who actually invested in the share. They had to do some difficult decisions. So to be able to decide if they're going to go forward with that. Then we have other company like Lukoil from Russia that also need to evaluate for the development of the Block R. That's the other issues. And then we have the other rest of the company. So I think at this moment we are having discussion with all of them. It's not an easy decision for them because this is a commitment. None of them have already signed the contract. We just signed memorandum of understanding. But you will understand once they sign the contract, these are economic obligations. And some of them, they're asking for more time to be able to confirm if they will go forward with that or they will ask for an extension before they sign it. So for us, we are very, very flexible. We are not giving the deadline. This is not really the time to pressure companies. So hopefully, like I said, by June, we should be able to announce either we sign any contract or we will decide that we put all those blocks back into the license round.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to Ian from Upstream. So let me just. All right, Ian, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Thank you, Excellency, for an interesting webinar. All my questions have been answered apart from one. I was just trying to find out, if I could, there's been a lot of talk over the last, well, I suppose, year and more about Exxon and Marathon wanting to exit Equatorial Guinea because their assets are considered non-core within their portfolios. Has there been any movement on those plans to exit now? I suppose if they did decide they want to go, clearly now would not be a good time given asset values are pretty low. I wonder if you could sort of elaborate on that, if you may.
First of all, I will tell you that regarding that matter, I'm not losing no sleep. So I'm pretty much relaxed. You have to understand the position of the government. This is a producing asset, still have more upside to be able to continue with the production. We have a block next to it, it's 6 and EG12. So the potential is there. I think it's the decision of the company at this stage. I mean, they have a pretty good proposal, but clearly the oil price really have hinged on these decisions on them. For us, the decision is clear. Your period is coming to expire. You need to make a decision, or you either have an extension or either we get the block back. I mean, this is not the first time that happened to any producing countries. We have example from Indonesia, Malaysia, Norway. So this is not complicated. I mean, if Exxon really wanted to have a solution, we could have with an option. One of them is you could have what they call it the technical assistant contract. We can either go to the enhanced oil recovery. There is different way to go forward with this. The beauty about it is that this is a producing asset. It's making oil and it's very well maintained by ExxonMobil. So it will be up to the company. For me, I'm happy. The government received more than 60%, more than 50% of the crude comes to the state. So we are pretty happy with it. Of course, the decline is a major concern, but the decline happens and it's happening because there is no more activity happening in the area. So again, if we know that there's going to be more development, then we go forward. The condition that we gave to the new players interested in coming is that if you want to come and if you want us to give an extension, you need to come with a commitment to invest heavily in the field. If you're not going to do that, it's better for us to take it. So we need to be very clear. We are looking at that option that maybe we can end up as the state taking that asset and running it alone in the case that Exxon does not find a solution.
Okay, thank you for your answers. Very interesting.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And last, we're going to take a question from Yinka from Bloomberg. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Your Excellency. I have two questions. My first question is to know whether OPEC Plus has discussed deepening cuts beyond the 9.7 million barrels per day that you had agreed on before this crisis. And my second question is to know whether OPEC is frustrated that the G20 oil producers haven't given more detail on their own production cutbacks.
Okay. The first question is what we agree in OPEC was not just a short-term solution. In OPEC, it was agreed a long-term solution. It was a solution from the agreement to June, and then from June all the way to December, and then from next year too. So all those cuts were according to that. So we actually have give a very comprehensive solution that it will be able to help everybody. And that's the way that we are dealing. So it was agreed on a cut, and it was the 9.7 for now to June, and then from June to December, I believe 5 point something. I think it's public, so I'm sorry if I can't remember. And then from January next year to June, I think there is another figure, but the agreement was not only short-term, but it was until 2021. Now, the frustration of OPEC regarding G20, I think is very clear. And I'm one of the OPEC members that also I feel like that. The biggest producer in the world before we have the deal was not Saudi Arabia, was not Russia, was the United States of America. These are the biggest producers of the world. But they blame the OPEC members. We are not the one controlling. You have all these countries Norway, the rest, they're producing oil. And all of them, they're expecting OPEC to be doing the cut. I think a responsibility, and this is why countries that Canada, like for example, were very fundamental and they really helped. They understood the solution that it is not just the member of OPEC. If we want to save our industry, we all need to contribute. So Canada really helped, but you need to be able to have that comprehensive discussion, not only on the OPEC member, but other producing. You have to remember that the number of non-OPEC producing oil is much bigger, and the share is much bigger than the member of OPEC. So clearly people believing that OPEC is the one controlling the price. We are not, and the OPEC member are not controlling the price. We are trying to help. But the problem is that you can't expect only the member of OPEC and OPEC Plus to fix everything. There's a lot of countries who are still producing, but they're making no cut, so they're not helping. So at this moment, they are actually suffering at the same time that we are suffering. So the frustration is true, because I mean, the excuse is that no, this is the market price, we cannot tell the producer what to do. Okay, no problem. Then we flood the market with oil. Let's see what's gonna happen when you start having all those unemployed, all those business going out of business that is happening right now. So I think the issue about this is that there is a misconception that the responsible of the oil price collapse is Russia and Saudi Arabia. That's not true. Russia and Saudi Arabia, they were not having a war. What we all were saying that this was not sustainable. We have a pandemic and it's not sustainable. Other countries need to chip. Countries like Mexico, countries like United States, countries like Norway, other big producers who are actually be sitting there silent, just watching what we are doing. So again, we do believe that more countries need to be responsible on doing that. And if we all want the price to go back to 60, what we all need to do, and this is very clear, we all need to stop producing completely for 6 to 1 year, not producing. And then you see how things will go back. But again, we can do that. But again, the frustration is clear because there are a lot of producers who produce more than us, but they're just sitting there thinking that this is just responsibility of OPEC.
Perfect. Thank you, Excellency. Before I turn it over to Your Excellency to make any closing remarks, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this webinar today. Thank Concepcion for co-moderating with me. And I also want to make a big announcement that on May 11th, Africa Oil and Power and the African Energy Chamber are joining together to have His Excellency Mohamed Barkindo, the Secretary General of OPEC, as well as African oil ministers, join us for another webinar looking at the global oil markets and what's being done on the African continent. So keep a lookout for the details on that upcoming webinar on May 11th. And Excellency, I'm going to turn it over to you if you have any closing remarks that you would like to make.
Well, my only closing remark is that, first of all, I want to thank Africa Oil and Power, Concha Suba, EGO4EO, and Africa Energy Chamber, and all the journalists and personnel who have actually joined me for this. And I want to reiterate one thing, and this is not just because I'm an African. I do believe that this is the opportunity for Africa. This is the opportunity for Africa producer. This is an opportunity for Africa service company. You should not feel pity on yourself. You should not feel that because the expats have left, now our business are doomed. This is the opposite. This is the time for you to take charge. This is the time that you are in the country. All of them, they can do video conference. You should take charge of your service industry. The production is not going to stop. This is clearly very important. Government needs to be flexible, making sure that the IOC continue. But the service company, African service company, stop putting your head in the ground thinking that people should feel pity of yourself. Start thinking that, oh my God, I'm gonna lose all my business. I have to fire all my people. Think out of the box. Think what can you do to be able to survive. There's a lot of African countries who need service. I'll give you an example. If some of the expatriates have left Equatorial Guinea or Ghana or Angola and say, okay, I'm leaving because they have COVID-19, there's several companies in Nigeria that do the same service. We should join the Nigerians and come to country and do it. So production will not stop. So I think it's very important to stop going through the pity of saying that we are doomed, this is gonna be destruction. It is not destruction, the resources are in country. We have it. This is what happened in Indonesia, it happened in Malaysia, it happened in Trinidad and Tobago, and we can do it. I do believe we are even more intelligent than them. So I think Nigerian, Ghanaian, Angola, we should not feel that this is the end of the world. This is the opposite. This is an opportunity. We should take charge. I'm not saying that we should nationalize and take illegally. I'm saying that we should make sure that this time the nationalization of the service should be done forcefully, and it should be done now that there is no other options. So again, for me, I will do my best in my own country. I will see if we are successful, but I insist, this is a great opportunity for the resources in our country, and you should not feel pity. Three things very important, like I said, shareholder value. This is the revenue for the people, the revenue for your dividends, for your shareholders. You need to keep your people need to be safe, you need to be able to be protected. And the last one, a very important one, you need to make sure that you keep a relationship. It's not a war, it's not to kick anybody out, it's just to make sure that you can benefit for your resources much better. Okay? So this is the last thing that I want to say. Like I said, I want to thank everybody, and hopefully I'll be doing this more and being able to discuss. And I thank all the journalists for their questions, and any other thing that I can do, I'll be more than open to discuss and respond to anybody else. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We're very honored by the discussion. Everybody, thank you very much for participating today, and I hope you have a pleasant day ahead. Thank you very much.